A bunch of you keep sending me this dude's videos and saying, hey, Chef Brian, he's copying you. He's reacting to the same videos. He also calls it Pro Chef Reacts. It's the same thumbnail style. I'm gonna be reacting to Chef James Makinson, Pro Chef Reacts, to Uncle Roger reviewing Chef Wang perfect fried rice. Before I go on with today's episode, I do want to give a shout out to all of my amazing sous chef level patrons. Guys, thank you so much for your support. You, along with all the patrons, really do make a difference on this channel. And for those of you who are watching and wondering, what do I get if I become a patron? Well, you get early access to new episodes, discounts off my merch store, but most importantly, patron exclusive content. So be sure to visit the link in the description below and become a patron today. Now, there are a couple things I want to address before I go on with today's reaction. Number one, a bunch of you keep sending me this dude's videos and saying, hey, Chef Brian, he's copying you. He's reacting to the same videos. He also calls it Pro Chef Reacts. It's the same thumbnail style. That was before I changed my thumbnails. But I just want to say, I don't care. It's all good. There's enough YouTube and internet for everybody. And guess what? This isn't the first time someone copies, and this isn't gonna be the last time that somebody copies. And most importantly, I've copied shit too. That goes with anything that becomes popular. Now, particularly with food, avocado toast, bao buns, ramen. I mean, how many times have you seen these dishes pop up on menus across the world? Point number two, I know technically I've already reacted to Uncle Roger reacting to Chef Wang. We're getting super meta here, reacting to Chef James Makinson, reacting to blah, blah, blah. You get the point. But you know what? I decided I want to stamp this out. Let's check out this guy's video. I scrolled through his thumbnails. He has some cooking videos and he looks super legit. I'm curious, what's his take on that stuff? So with that said, let's get into the reaction.
We're gonna review Chef Wang, aka...
His birthday is 1 month after my birthday. My birthday is in May.
Oh, Wang Gang's born in
Quite
89.
close.
Wang Gang, home-style egg fried rice with spring
I'm born in
onion.
84,
Chef
so
Wang is
I'm an old
famous
fuck compared
Chinese
to
chef. His video will be in Mandarin, but Uncle Roger, good uncle, will put subtitle for you. Don't be pussy. Learn to read.
Hello， 大家好，我们昨天饭煮多了，放在冰箱里面冻得比较硬，结果冷饭之后拿来炒饭。
Cold
See,
rice.
this is the great thing about making fried rice.
I have to like remind myself I'm reacting to Chef James here and not necessarily Uncle Roger reacting to Wang Gang. This is kind of messing me up a little bit.
It's not necessary to just make the rice for it. Yeah, you can use the leftover rice from your previous meal or something and then make the fried rice. Albeit though, if you are going to make like a lot of fried rice, well then you need to make sure that you have enough. But still, it's one of these great recipes that you use the leftovers.
Yeah, to add to that, so I owned a Chinese takeout restaurant at one point and we always had leftover rice, but we also always ran out, especially towards the end of the night. It would be common at the end of the night that we end up using the fresh rice out of the cooker. You just have to make sure you really cook it. You cook it a little longer is essentially what it is. It's a lot easier in a wok with a high-powered wok burner to achieve, still get that, well, you're gonna get a wok hay no matter what, but you won't really tell as much of a difference if you use a professional wok stove. Just an FYI.
Chef Wang cooking for his uncle. But you don't even need to tell me this is uncle, because everything about this guy scream Chinese uncle. Uncle Roger like his fashion. Maybe I should wear wife beater like him.
The other thing with the rice is that if you really overcook the rice, it's not good for fried rice. Yeah, it needs to be a little on the hard side. You don't want clumpy, mushy, like really soft overcooked rice for it. So this is one thing to keep in mind.
What's this video gonna look like with two heads in the screen? You're gonna add mine.
这个鸡蛋的话打进去，不用搅它。
I'm having a hard time focusing where to look.
He's using a massive round or a tree trunk round, yeah? When you cut a piece of wood or anything like this is what he's using. Now in the Western kitchens, we don't tend to use, well, firstly, we don't use a lot of wood in the kitchen because it's not prohibited. If we do use wood, it's only, say, for the butcher block.
I think he meant to say it is prohibited, which isn't technically true, at least Europe versus the States could be a little different. I think he meant to say that it is prohibited. Wood cutting boards are very porous, and also you can't submerge them in water, otherwise they will warp, so they're not like the best for a pro kitchen. With that said, I mean, they were used for centuries and centuries, right? But that's besides the point. But he's absolutely right. It's very common in a Asian kitchen to find a big hunk of wood acting as the cutting board versus the West, where they use squared off, rectangular plastic cutting boards.
This would be more like for the butcher block. In the Western kitchens, we tend to use rectangular cutting boards, and they do tend to be quite thin, which I don't like. Here in Spain, we use rectangular cutting boards, but they're extremely thick. They're heavy. The benefit to using a heavy board like he's using also, it's not going to move very easily. And you can also put, say, some damp cloths underneath it, so it helps it not to move. But if it has a little bit of weight to it, it's better. The only thing is you have to be careful when using such a heavy cutting board, because if it does fall off the table, which has happened quite a few times in the kitchen, if the point lands on your foot, forget about it, you lose it. It's just something to keep in mind.
It just depends on the type of cutting board that you purchase. There's thin ones that are cheaper. There are thicker ones. The thicker ones are generally more expensive. And I totally agree with him. I prefer thicker cutting boards because they have more weight to them. They shift around less. He did mention putting some damp towels underneath. That is actually not a Department of Health code here in New York. And I'm pretty sure generally in the States, because it could potentially harbor, and facilitate the growth of bacteria, viruses, blah, blah, blah. You're supposed to be using these rubber things to underneath that prevents it from moving. 9 out of 10 times we're using damp side towels underneath the cutting board. We don't use that for service, but I think the fear is like you're butchering chicken and the juice gets into it, and now you have chicken juice soaked into your cloth underneath your cutting board. More of a precaution. Obviously if you're butchering chicken, you should be sanitizing the whole station after you work with it, but James is right on. He's right on the money.
All right, now we can also see that he's using the one-hand technique when cracking an egg. This is easy. I learned to do this when I was a kid. It just takes a little bit of practice. And it's better to crack the egg on a flat surface than on the rim or the edge of a bowl.
I preach that all the time.
To do that. 1, you're going to get eggshells into the egg, and 2, it's a little slower and you may tip the bowl anyway. There is another method on cracking an egg that my French chef taught me. It's by taking 2 eggs, cracking one against each other, and one will always break.
Spot on there, man. I mention this all the time. Anytime I see an egg get cracked, I always say crack it on a flat surface. There's more resistance when you crack onto a solid flat surface versus the edge of the bowl that can tip. Potentially the product in the bowl could flip out. And I find that, you have a easier chance of getting shell in there. Many of you in the comments seem to disagree with me, but, fuck you.
So smooth, tap, crack, and throw, all in one fluid motion. Chef Wang have more talent in one hand than Jamie Oliver have in his whole body. And his uncle just standing there looking.
这个辣椒我们直接切成颗粒就行了。
His chopping quite smooth also.
This is another little trick that we use in the kitchen when having to cut vegetables or anything quickly. He's taken a lot of chilies, he's collected them, and he's just slicing them all at once instead of slicing 2 or 3 at a time.
Yep.
When you get better with a knife, you can start adding...
Dude, I want to stop right here and say he's talking about a lot of stuff that I feel like I missed. He's clearly adding value to the video. He mentioned the cutting board thing. He's mentioning the quantity of stuff that you cut up. Those are all things I didn't mention in my video, and honestly, that I took for granted. It just kind of pretty much assume everyone thinks that way when it comes to cutting product, but he's absolutely right. I can't tell you how many times I've had rookie cooks literally cutting 1 or 2, in this case, chilies at a time, and it drives me fucking crazy. But it comes with experience. Then you got to have a chef like me who chews them out, but I don't chew them out. I gently tell them and educate them. This guy's legit, man. He's spot on. He knows his stuff, and I like it.
In the beginning, I wouldn't suggest it if you're not comfortable with a knife because it's easy to cut yourself. Normally, in the Western kitchen, the only time that we use a knife like this is the cleaver. Now, obviously, he doesn't have this type of knife. He has the Chinese chef's knife, which is much thinner, and if you use it for bone, you can chip like any knife. Now, there are some benefits to using a Chinese knife versus a Western chef's knife.
I don't necessarily agree with that the knife is thinner for a Chinese cleaver. I think they're about the same thickness, and if anything, because of the weight and size, it actually makes it easier. Maybe he has experience with a different type of cleaver than I do, but in my experience, no, you won't really have an issue with that. And one thing I've noticed in particularly the Chinese kitchen where they're using Chinese cleavers, they use one knife the entire day, whereas the Western kitchen, they'll have a paring knife, they'll have a boning knife. In the Chinese kitchen, they will use the one knife for everything.
Then double it as a spatula, which helps a lot whenever you're cooking a lot of products. In the Western kitchens, we do use the chef's knife as a spatula to pick up food. As you can tell with the chef's knife tapering at the end, we don't have a lot of space to pick anything up.
That's true.
With the Chinese knife, you do.
When I use a Western style knife, which is, again, not as wide as a Chinese cleaver. So after you cut a bunch of product, typically you have the cutting board at the edge of the table. And then, if let's say this is a bowl, you put it at the edge of the bowl and just push everything in there.
You have to hold the chef's knife or the Chinese knife a little differently than, say, how I hold my Wusthof or your Western knives. You don't want to put a finger on top of the knife.
Correct.
Some home cooks do. It's fine if you do and this is your method, but if you're there for hours on end cutting, your finger, this joint here, is going to get very sore. Yes, so it's always good to have the finger off to the side.
Yep.
And then for the Chinese knives, obviously they're a little bigger, the blades are bigger, so you may have to use two fingers like Chef Wang. I absolutely love using Chinese knives. Mine is back home in the US and I need to get another one.
Chopping good again.
You can tell that his method of cutting is a little different than how you use a Western chef's knife, yeah? The motion of cutting is just a little different.
Slightly. Same principle though. The main thing using any type of knife is you want to cut, not push. I can't tell you how many times home cooks or rookie cooks, they always push into their product rather than cut. That's the main thing. Because of the sheer size versus a Western knife, yes, ultimately it works a little different. It's like, the difference between riding a bike and rollerblading, for example. Like, they're both means of transportation. It takes a few seconds for you to adjust to one another is kind of the point I'm trying to make.
This is another technique that's very good to know in the kitchen. Anytime that you have any spring onions or any chives or say even celery or anything long, any long vegetables or herbs, if you cut them in half and then double them,
okay,
and
so
then slice,
you see his technique here. I'm 99% sure this is his B-roll that he filmed. That Chef Cody's wearing is the same in his reaction footage. It appears he's pushing, right? I remember I just said pushing rather than cutting, but if you pay attention to his tip, he's rolling the tip, and it's this very fluid motion, and he's not rocking back and forth a lot because he's very efficient with his movement, but he is cutting there. You'll see there's a slight back and forth motion. There's a little pushing there, but ultimately his technique is correct in that the tip never leaves the board, and it's a very efficient range of motion, and he is cutting, not pushing.
A lot of time in the kitchen. The next time that you have something like this, give it a try. Go slowly if you're not comfortable with the knife, and see how much time you save. Ooh.
Uncle Roger excited.
Okay, so he has a very top-of-the-line professional wok station, yes, outside for his for this property as well, yes? He put a lot of money into this.
Because they gonna cook in outdoor kitchen. Niece and nephew. Uncle Roger explained this before. But in Asia, we have two kitchens. Indoor kitchen and outdoor kitchen. Indoor kitchen just for show, useless. We used to chop melon and make cereal. Outdoor kitchen is where the magic happens. Because outdoor kitchen, you can make as big fire as you want. You won't burn your house down.
I have to keep reminding myself, don't react to Uncle Roger. I'm reacting to Chef James. I've covered all this stuff in the original video, so, it's gonna pop up there. Check it out, or over there.
This is a very nice professional wok station. I would love to have something like this. As we can tell, he has two wok setups. He has two big woks as well, yeah? The bigger the wok, the more product you can fry, because if you're gonna be frying a lot of product in a smaller wok, you're gonna have Well, more depth, no, with the rice, and it's not going to be frying, it's going to be boiling or steaming. And you don't want that. It won't be fried rice, it'll be more like steamed rice.
What I call that, or another term for that, is overcrowding. When you overcrowd a pan, having too much product in a pan, yes, you're going to steam it because there's too much product. The product can't move around. It's not enough surface area to let the moisture escape. So rather than the moisture escaping, it's all, trapped in all that product if you overcrowd a pan.
Wok stations have water that run continuously. This does a few things. It not just helps cool the station down because that surface is very hot, but the other thing is that that water continuously cleans the station. So anytime that you have any splatter from oil, rice, anything like this, it'll wash it away and be collected in a little area, as you can tell in front of him. It has a little drain in front of him. But this is fantastic. You can also tell that he has a little colander to his left that he can use at any time. Now, the fire that's coming out.
Yes, that's one part of it, that, the consistent water does help clean it, but I honestly feel that's secondary to the main reason, which is to keep the station cool, because it is such a powerful form of heat. Like, if you turn that water off, you will see carbon build up all over the fucking top of that wok stove surface. But there is like a basin. Depending on which way the water flows on the wok stations I've worked at, the water flows away. So if there is any splatter, if there's any kernels of rice or noodle or whatever, that water pressure that's flowing down is not actually strong enough to push it down into the basin. And then that basin is inclined and it goes all the way to the end, and then there's a basket, catches all the product, and then there is a drain that goes into the drain, into the sewage. Generally what happens is after the chef cooks, he'll scoop water with the wok spoon and just flush it down. I just want to mention, James is mentioning a lot of stuff that I didn't think to mention on my videos. So I'm curious. He reacted to a lot of the same videos that I did, so I'm pretty sure he adds other tidbits of knowledge that I probably missed.
Is not your typical flame in the house kitchen or even in the professional ring burners. That thing is extremely powerful, and it will superheat that wok and everything around it.
Yep.
So the water helps cool everything down. And with this wok setup, we can't see, but he probably has all the mise en place off to the side, all the oil, another dumping station, and then the food. So this wok setup is something that I would absolutely love to have in my house.
I don't want to have a wok setup like this at my house. They are fucking huge and messy and hot as hell. Maybe if it was outside.
All right, so now you can see that there's a drain. And he also has a little stand here for the wok. Some of the woks have flat bottoms, but not all of them. This one has a round bottom to it.
Yeah, I didn't notice that little piece of metal that's at the edge, and that is so that when he pulls it off to the side, that it holds stable.
This is the only time I see Chef Wang
cracks me
uncle
up.
smiling. Apparently seeing people fry egg brings him so much joy.
If you see the underside of that egg, is perfectly fried.
This guy make his egg look like it dancing. Yo, good tossing. And this to prevent clumping of the rice. Good technique. Good technique.
I remember I mentioned he's using the back of the spoon because it has more surface area, versus using the edge. He's using the back of the spoon. I know I mentioned this, but I just can't help myself.
You can tell that somebody has used a wok for a long time compared to somebody that hasn't used a wok that much. I mean,
easily.
Ramsay, when he was making his rice, he did very good, first of all, with the rice. But secondly, the way that he was tossing wok is a little awkward, but it wasn't the same setup. I have to say this. Clay pot is not the same as using a wok station like this. I'm definitely going to be watching more videos of Chef Wang. He does a very, very good job.
This guy know what
100%.
he's doing. I wonder if Chef Wang is single because he seems so confident in his right hand. Sorry, children. Is that MSG Frio? I think now it's time to use Jamie Oliver's favorite word, yeah! And soy sauce go in. Okay. Frio, look at that graceful splash.
Again, I can't help myself. Also, James doesn't seem to be saying much right now. Very important thing about applying the soy sauce for fried rice is that he did it onto the actual wok versus onto the rice. What that's gonna do is, number one, give you more wok hei, but most importantly, it's going to remove the moisture because you work so hard to remove the moisture from the egg, from the chili, from the rice. And then you're gonna put this soy sauce directly on, which you can. The end product will be fine, but you know, James mentioned you can really tell when a chef has a lot of wok experience. You know, I have some wok experience. I don't look that good. You know, Chef Wang make it look good. You know what I mean? Getting back to the soy sauce, very important to put it onto the wok. Gives you more wok hei, but also removes the moisture quickly.
If any of you wonder why he's adding the soy sauce around the exterior of the wok,
okay,
it's
nice.
so it doesn't drop the temperature of the wok. The hottest part of the wok is in the center. So you don't want to be pouring liquid into the center of the wok to drop the temperature, because otherwise it's going to steam. It's going to evaporate and then steam the rice. You don't want that.
Yeah. And spring onion as garnish. Everything correct.
And he's also adding the spring onion at the end. Yes, he's not going to be overcooking the spring onions.
Is that Uncle Roger's sea chicken in the background? I like his uncle house. Got chicken on floor you can use for cooking. And got bamboo stick back there used for beating nephew. Everything you need is on the ground. Ooh, looks so nice.
Damn, I'm hungry now.
Fuyo, look at that technique.
Look at that wok technique, baby. All the guys at the Chinese restaurant that I had, they all did that. That was like their default. They would flick the wok and all the product would go into the spoon, always badass. Again, I don't make it look that good.
You can see the green onions are still green, but you can see everything, yes? You can see the egg.
Usually, normal chef will just scoop rice up from wok. But this chef Wang, he tossed the rice into ladle. Fuyo, this is so graceful. He like dancer.
Wang Gang would need to do this flicking technique into the spoon more so than a regular wok with a singular elongated handle that sticks out, because it's a lot harder to pick up this style wok with the two handles and to, you know, scrape it onto your plate or bowl. After he empties it out, he absolutely can. You know, I mentioned that a lot of the wok chefs, the chefs at the wok stations would do this technique of flicking the wok product into the wok spoon. That's when the wok is, you know, when they're doing the first few scoops, the wok is very full. So after the weight gets lightened up, then they take it and use the wok spoon and scrape it down. Just a little detail.
And he don't drop single grain of rice.
No, that's impossible. Impossible. You will always drop a grain of rice. I don't care who you are. You will always drop a grain of rice when you're making fried rice in a wok and tossing it around like that. It drives me fucking nuts. There was always a grain of rice somewhere at the end of the night, and it always drove me nuts.
I hope they do taste tests.
来这边。
Oh, there we go.
And you can see that
could eat
he
all that
does
rice by
have
myself.
an extra table off to the right for this wok station.
Yeah.
It makes life so much easier when you have all the mise en place and everything there off to the side, so you can just keep cooking.
The wok station setups, you had the burner in front of you. There was generally a small table with all the sauces and condiments that you need to use, sugar, salt, MSG, stuff like that. But then there's another station further down called Tsao, which basically means taking all the mise en place, and they'll put like the protein in one bowl, they'll put the vegetables in one bowl, maybe an egg, and then they'll push it down to that chef's station. And there's just, you know, when it's really busy, you just have one guy pulling prep and one guy doing the wok cookery. Well, not one guy, but you'll have multiple. So the Tsao guy will be setting up the prep for multiple dishes and just nonstop as the wok chefs are cooking.
Let's just see what his uncle think. Because we all know middle-aged uncle don't bullshit you.
Moment of truth there.
I don't remember this.
Oh,
I
he's
don't remember this edit. It's been that long.
smiling.
Look at that. He is smiling.
That's how you know his egg fried rice amazing. He impressed his grumpy kung fu
Hard to do.
hustle uncle.
It is hard to do.
还有就是我们单炒饭不要拿热饭去炒，热饭的话炒出来。
Words of wisdom. Word of
I don't
wisdom.
remember
You
that.
don't cook rice just for the fried rice and use it the same day. It needs to be cold, needs to be not mushy, needs to be a little on the harder side.
This egg fried rice, perfect. 10 out of 10. Uncle
1000%.
Roger approved.
Well, guys, I have to say that Chef Wang Gang did a excellent job.
Excellent job. Guy knows his shit. Pretty cool. Mentioned a bunch of stuff that I didn't mention, so good stuff. Again, it's all good, man. There's enough YouTube for everybody. People copy all the time. I've copied dishes. I've copied music. I play in a band. I copy riffs all the time. So guy knows what he's doing. High tide raises all ships. God bless him, and hope his channel continues to grow. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. And remember, don't be afraid to make mistakes because it can only make you stronger. And with that said, I am Chef Brian Tsao, not your typical chef, and I'll see you really soon.